I'm Eric Pickle. I'm the owner and head pit master here at Smoked Pickle Barbecue. We're in West Knoxville. We own a catering business, food truck, soon to be a brick and mortar, and we are doing the backyard barbecue series here on WBIR. We want to start with like the most popular backyard items. So it's one of the items that we actually do on the food truck, even though we are barbecue. We use our brisket trim. So we take what's left over from our briskets and we hand grind the meat into half-pound patties. So we use a grill that's somewhat of a hybrid. So it's a wood-fired grill. We're not running it too hot, but we're putting it over wood smoke. From there, we do a pimento cheese that we put on top of it. You can either make your own or you can buy one from the grocery store. We do house-made pickles and house-made pickled onions, and then we top it with a house-made barbecue sauce. So it's more of a smokehouse burger, but it's a super easy burger to do in your backyard that'll give you a little bit different flavor than a normal grilled burger. Before we get started, there's a few things that we think are critical anytime you're grilling outside. These are things you can buy anywhere. So we always have a sharp knife on hand. We actually buy nitrile gloves. So a lot of people, if you don't want to have to keep washing your hands constantly, you can get a set of nitrile gloves. Anytime you're handling raw meat, you're handling different items, you can change those out without having to wash your hands. Still need to wash your hands from time to time, just for good hygiene. We also these are extremely important. So we keep a thermometer around us anytime. Normally you'll see it hooked up here in my shirt. And the reason these are important, just so we're checking temperature so we know things are done, if they're not done, if they're getting close, that type of thing. So anytime you're backyard cook, you can buy these on Walmart and Amazon, extremely cheap. Some other things that we keep on hand, anytime you're dealing with fire, we keep a bucket of water. It's not likely to get out of hand, but we do keep a bucket of water on hand in case anything were to happen. And anytime you're dealing with charcoal, getting started is always kind of a difficult thing, especially for the people that cook on charcoal wood only. So you can actually purchase one of these on Amazon or go to Walmart, super cheap. Or you can go to somewhere local, an Ace Hardware, something like that, and grab one of these, help you get your fire started, and that'll help you get your charcoal going if you're cooking on wood. So we also keep wash rags and buckets just on hand, towels. You never know. You always see, chefs on TV with these on their shoulders and things like that. So you never know what you'll need, but these are just a few of the essentials we keep on hand. It'll make your job easier. So we're gonna start with our hand ground brisket burger today. So we take it's approximately probably 75-25. One little key when you're gonna cook burgers the way that we do, and we're gonna smoke them, is we like to use something that has a little more fat in it. So a lot of people like to they think they're getting a little bit leaner meat by getting 90-10. You probably should err on the side, if you're gonna cook on fire on a grill as opposed to maybe on a griddle or a smash burger, use a little more fat content, and that'll help your burger survive that, and it just gives you a juicier burger in the end. What happens with leaner meat is it tends to shrink. So we've taken our brisket trim here, we double ground it, and so we're gonna turn it just into basically a half-pound burger. You can weigh it at home on the scale. I've done enough of these now where we kind of just know what it's gonna be. But all I'm doing is just forming this patty, and we just want a nice, even patty. We actually like to do these pretty thick because, again, they will shrink up when you put them on the fire. And one key, kind of just a little secret you can do on these guys is, and we're not actually gonna do it right now, but we would in our normal process, is once you patty them, take them and throw them back in the freezer for about 20 minutes. And that'll help kind of solidify them back, and will give you kind of a uniform appearance there. And it also just makes them stand up a little bit on the smoker or the grill. So I've got this one, just again, it's hand patted. It's about half a pound. So that's what we're looking for there. So all we're gonna do, as far as seasoning, is we're gonna take so we actually blend in this. This is in a store-bought bottle, but we like to use coarse pepper, so like a 16 mesh pepper or something similar, as our first ingredient, and then we use salt and onion powder, and that gives it kind of a little bit different flavor. And again, since this is going on a smoker, don't be afraid to go a little bit heavy on the seasoning. A lot of people tend to under-season their meats. That's what we see the most when people ask us, what is it that you do to food that's a little different? That's the number one thing, is we don't under-season things. So we're gonna put this seasoning on. I'm actually gonna grab one of my towels, like I said, we keep around. And now we're putting on the salt and the onion powder here. And this will give us a nice uniform coat. These are pretty heavy by most people's seasoning standards, but again, we're smoking them off, so they're gonna have a little bit different flavor profile. One real quick tip is anytime you're cooking and you're dealing with a smoker or grill, go ahead and get that thing started. So especially if you're cooking with wood and charcoal, a lot of people, they'll go ahead, they'll start making their food, they'll prep that, and they may not realize, like, given weather conditions or whether their charcoal's gonna light, whether the wood's gonna light. So we kind of like to get things started, honestly, about an hour, hour and a half before we're actually gonna cook, especially for long smoke. So that's one little key there. So we're gonna pop these on the smoker. And we've had this thing going. It's probably about where these are gonna sit. It's probably gonna be about 300 degrees. So we're gonna let these go for about 45 minutes and see where they're at. We don't open anything until we think we're ready to check these for temperature. So they always say, the old adage is, if you're looking, you're not cooking. So there we go. Guys, we got our burgers on the grill, our smoked burgers that we're doing. One thing that we did do in between shots here is we did grab some sanitizer and wipe down our cutting board. So anytime we're switching meats, we're going from beef to pork, and particularly on poultry, we make sure that we sanitize and get those remnants off of the cutting board or whatever you're using there. And we always keep that handy, so we've got a wash and a sanitize that we keep over there. So we're moving on to the pork steak, which is my personal favorite. One of the favorite things that we offer here. And so what this is, and you can either do this at home or you can have your local butcher do it. So this is a whole Boston butt that has no blade in it. So normally when we smoke Boston butts, we have a whole blade in it, and the blade has been removed in here. So you can either take this to your butcher and have them, if the blade's still in it, have them cut it with a bandsaw, so however thick you want, or you can just get a boneless one. They sell them at Costco. They sometimes will sell them in grocery stores, and just cut it yourself. We prefer to do that method just so we get the thickness that we want on these pork steaks. So what I'm gonna do, first thing you need, and I mentioned this at the outset, is a really sharp knife, because anytime we're working with meat, we got a dull knife, especially as when it's hot outside. If things start to get a little sticky, you're not gonna be able to cut well on that. So we start with a really sharp knife, and we're just gonna cut about 1.5 inches thick steak. Now this is the end, so I'm actually probably not gonna use that one. I like to go to this middle section, like for a ribeye, and I'm just gonna cut, pushing down with pressure on the cutting board, a perfect thick pork steak. So what we've cut here is we've cut a pork steak. So again, we're about 1.5 inches here. And we are probably, honestly, about a 1.5 pounds on these guys. And that's what makes these such a great value. I mean, you can get a pork butt for $2 a pound. So 1.5 pound steak is gonna cost you, $3. Instead of a ribeye, 1.5 pound ribeye is probably gonna be $22, $24. And if you cook these up correctly, you get such a great food item on a budget. So that's why these make such a great backyard food item. These are probably the most hidden thing out there that people don't know about. And as you can see, just like a ribeye, you get a little bit of a fat cap on the edge here. We have our fat cap, which runs through here. That's gonna be the best part of the ribeye right there. We've also got some intermuscular fat, a little bit of sinew. So the reason that we smoke these first and then kind of sear them to finish, one is because of how thick they are. You would never get the inside done. The outside would be crispy, but the inside would be done. And two, it's because we're trying to get all this to break down, right? So we see that we've got some sinew here, which is normal in a pork butt, and then we got some intermuscular fat. So we're trying to break these guys down. And what comes out is just a really, really excellent summertime pork steak for a fraction of the price of a ribeye. So we're gonna season these pork steaks up. So essentially what we do with the pork steaks is we're gonna season them the same way you would a ribeye. Keep in mind, these guys are big, so they're over 1 pound each. The important thing with seasoning is that we get enough on there. So salt's kind of our #1 ingredient, but again, we're gonna use the same base. So we're gonna start with our coarse pepper. And again, we're using a copious amount because we are smoking this, and it'll give it a nice smoky peppery flavor. And one thing we just said off camera, which is kind of important, is you can season these ahead of time. You can season them a day ahead of time. You can season them the morning of, and what that does is it allows the salt to penetrate and it gives it a better overall flavor, and this is referred to as a dry brine. And you can do this with anything like steaks, especially on chicken. We like to do that on chicken. Reason being is it pulls the moisture out of the meat, or out of the skin, and so it allows a really crispy skin, but make sure that the meat is really, really moist. So that's a process that we do use as well. I'm gonna move them over here off the heat and put these pork steaks over the heat. And what we're looking for on the pork steaks is, again, we're just cooking them to a similar temperature profile of a ribeye. So we're looking for, you know, 145, 150 degrees for medium. And then we're actually going to glaze them with a, it's gonna be really delicious with a little mustard glaze that we'll put on there. So it'll be delicious. What we got today is something that's definitely a backyard. It's an easy backyard favorite. We've got a bone-in pork chop. So this particular one, if you want to kind of get a better flavor off a pork chop, because a lot of times what people, they end up drying out pork chops, right? And so pork chops do not have a lot of fat to begin with. So we actually buy, they're called compart, which is kind of a higher end hog. Similar to like you would get prime beef, and these are dry aged. So we buy them this way. So, you know, still at a pretty decent price, you can get a pork chop that's not going to blow the bank out, but it's going to be really, really good. We buy them bone in because the bone gives it flavor. These guys are super simple, by the way. So we're going to season these just like we did our pork steaks. The same exact way because we're cooking them with the same method. So what I'm going to do is come in with just some coarse pepper again, and we're giving it a pretty heavy dose. Give it some nice color, give it a nice look like it's actually seasoned. And then I'm going to come back in with just our steakhouse seasoning, and we're going to go ahead and get this seasoned up. And again, the steakhouse seasoning is salt, pepper, garlic, and this one also has a little bit of onion powder in it. So just a basic savory rub. And it gives a really good look. These chops are nice and thick. You can tell they're going to be delicious. So we're getting more into the barbecue world now. We've been doing some grilling stuff, which is really fun, doing some pseudo smoking things. One of everybody's favorites is ribs. And we do a spare rib in our business. We also do baby backs from time to time, but I really prefer the spare ribs. Spare ribs are just pork ribs, 10 to 12 bones that come off of the bottom section as opposed to the loin. They got a little more fat in them, which is why we like to use spares. So when we get them in, we usually will just trim them up a little bit just to make sure they're uniform before we put them on the smoker. So what I'm doing is I'm just making sure that we don't have like these little pieces of fat or pieces of meat hanging off. And you could save those if you want and turn them into little snack bites you can put on the smoker. And then we're just kind of taking off some of this extra little fat if we got some of that on there, something that we don't want showing through. There's a thing called on the back called the flap and the silver skin. And what I'm looking at is I'm looking at this section right here, and basically it's a little film that's on the back of the rib, and you'll be able to see it when it's on there. A lot of people say you should take those off, and we don't. And the reason we don't is because we want our ribs to hold together. So our theory on ribs is we don't want them, there's that term fall off the bone. We want to push them to the point of being close to fall off the bone, but we don't want them falling off the bone. That means you've overcooked them. So part of that is just keeping that silver skin on. That silver skin will break down. The way that we cook ribs on our smoker, that heat will get in there and break that silver skin down. So on to seasoning. So seasoning is super simple on our ribs, the way that we do them. And we really have two primary ingredients that we use. So we use, as the base for everything we've done, we use the 16 mesh pepper. And I'm looking for a nice generous coat on these guys. They are a big piece of meat, so we can get away with that. And I'm gonna work this way. We got a little bit of wind, so that's one little tip. If you got a little wind while you're seasoning, go with the wind, not against it, right? So our wind is moving this way, so I'll just let it move that way. Just gonna pat that in a little bit. So the second thing that we put on is, a little secret, is we use seasoned salt. So you can use kosher salt at home, you can use regular salt, you can use barbecue rub. The way that we cook ribs, we don't like to have anything sweet in the actual rub because it tends to burn up on the smoker. If we're gonna apply any type of sweet, we apply it in the glaze at the end of the process. So we're putting all savory on here today. So basically, I'm just gonna take this seasoned salt and be pretty aggressive with it. Not too aggressive on the back side, but once we flip them over, I'm gonna go ahead and just really, like I said, we're using the wind to kind of let this drift onto the meat there. And we're just gonna coat these nice and even. And what I would do, even you know, in our process today, is I would let these sit for maybe a half hour and let that salt sweat into them. If you can get away with seasoning them the day ahead of time or the morning before you cook them, that will help you get that salt to penetrate. We're gonna go ahead and put our ribs. So our cooker's sitting at about 225 degrees right now. So we're gonna put our ribs on here. We locked it down there so nobody would get in and steal our meats, right? And while we're in here, you know, we've got these other items going, so we're just gonna kind of check them and see where they're at. Feel them, they're not quite there yet. However, these burgers are looking good. We're just gonna put our pimento cheese here. And we use a jalapeno pimento cheese, really good. You can either make it yourself or we use a Polly's Island, which is a really good pimento cheese. And we're gonna throw these on, maybe let it sit on smoker for about 5 minutes and just kind of take in that smoke flavor while everything else kind of cooks over here. Awesome. And now we're gonna build our burgers. So the way that we serve them is we do house-made garlic and dill pickles. So we make these in-house every single week. They take about 2 weeks, so we're always about 2 weeks behind on making pickles. And this is our own recipe here. So we're gonna put those on the burger. Gives it a nice tangy bite to it. And then we've got our, I'm gonna throw these in the trash here, our house-made pickled onions. So these only take, if you're making these at home, these are super simple. Sugar, salt, a couple other ingredients, and you can put it in the fridge. You can literally pickle onions overnight if you want to do it. It's a super easy brine. So we're gonna put these on the burger as well. And then I'm gonna go ahead and just stack that burger. And the way that we serve these is we serve them with our house-made barbecue sauce. So we have 4 different barbecue sauces that we made. We like to do them with our tangy red sauce. And it's got a lot of brown sugar, honey, ketchup, some of those notes in there, but a really heavy black pepper texture too, so it gives you a nice little tang on there. And these burgers are super delicious, super easy to make, as you saw when we made them here. It's not a lot of technical cooking you have to do, but these will be a banger at your outdoor grill party or whatever you're doing at your house. So we're gonna check we still have our pork steaks on here and our pork chop. So we're gonna check these real quick. And they're starting to look really good. Primarily, we always call it the eye test. The first thing to look at is the eye test. So what's the color of it look like? These got really red color. We've got some awesome caramelization happening on these. So I'm gonna check the temperature. I'm also gonna kind of go by feel. This one's tightening up, so I think it's done, but let's confirm. I bet it's probably in the 150s. 140-ish or so. So for a pork chop, we're getting close to where we're comfortable with pulling that, not quite yet. Then you have to remember with pieces of meat like this is they carry over. Carryover means when you pull them off, they keep cooking approximately 5 degrees or so. So we're gonna let this one just kind of sit here for just a minute. And these pork steaks, I bet, are probably in that same, yep, about 140, 150-ish range. So what I'm gonna do with the pork steaks now, again, I'm cooking these like a steak, is I'm going to divert from cooking them like a steak now. And we're gonna mop these. So this is our mustard barbecue mop. So what we do, we make a mustard barbecue sauce. So instead of a ketchup base, it's a mustard base. And then we add some chipotle and some peach extract in there as well. So it gives it kind of a little bit different flavors. You're on to the king daddy of barbecue. So you've mastered the burger, mastered the pork chop. And I could talk about brisket for hours. I won't do that today. Brisket is our #1 seller. It's kind of the thing that we're known for. And a lot of people, you know, think they put brisket up here at the pinnacle of barbecue. It's the hardest thing to make. It never comes out right. And then finally when you do it right, it's kind of like an addiction. When you finally get it right, you know, you're like, it's awesome. So brisket is not as hard as people make it out to be. It just requires a couple good things. And the most important thing with brisket in your process honestly starts outside of your smoker. It starts with your trim, right? And it actually starts before that. You got to pick out a good brisket. So if you go to the store and you pick out briskets, a lot of times, and we actually have them brought to us, they're delivered to us, you know, we order dozens a week. But we're always looking for something that's got some good marbling in it. So you can see that in your intermuscular fat. We're always looking for something that's got a nice little thick section to it. So we don't want a brisket that looks came off a sickly cow. That's the best way I can put it. So we want that, and the biggest part of the process you can do before you put it on the smoker to set yourself up for success is to trim it correctly. So what we do is we come in and we do a light trim on them to make sure that, one, that everything's even, right, on our briskets, and two, that when they sit on the smoker, that we're not getting any of the edges caught by excess heat, and we're not burning anything up, right? So one key thing on brisket trim is we want to get out any type of hard fats that are not going to render down there and cook. Even though we're going to cook this thing 12 to 14 hours, fat like this is not ever going to cook out. So this goes back to, we're going to take this out, but we may have the opportunity to use this for our burgers, for sausage, chili, anything you'd want to use. So I've taken that out. And again, all I'm looking to do is just kind of get this thing to where it's got a nice uniform shape. It'll sit on our smoker well, and we're not going to have any edges that get burned up. So on this top side, this is what we call the top side. We're looking good here. I'm not too upset with that. And I'm going to come in here and just really try to trim out some of this fat, this excess fat here. So we've got this section is called the Mohawk section right here. So I'm going to take this and take that out. And the reason I take that out again is because it's going to burn up on the smoker. So we're going to have issues with that getting annihilated by heat. So all I'm doing now is just shaping this brisket up and getting it ready to go on the smoker. Brisket, the way that we cook it, and most people in Texas would be proud of this, really is just salt and pepper. So the way that we do it, we start on this bottom side, which is the meat side, and we're gonna make one heavy, clean sweep of 16 mesh pepper. And then we're gonna use our seasoning salt. So again, this is a mixture of salt, it's got some onion powder, some other things in there. It's gonna give you some color as well. So one thing with briskets is we do go heavy. They're a big piece of meat. They're going to cook a long time. A lot of this is actually either going to flake off or just kind of sweat off of here. And so we're going to come in and do the top side the same way. Reason we call it the top side is because when it sits on the smoker, it's going to have that fat cap sitting on the top side on the smoker. And then I'm going to come in with salt, do it the same way. And then make sure we get our edges. That's always an important thing. So we want this seasoning covering the entire brisket. So it should look something like this bullet shape when it's ready to go on the smoker. We're gonna cut into our pork steaks and go ahead and cut these. We pulled these at about 160 degrees after we had glazed them. So we're not cooking these like a pork butt. You can cook a pork butt, you know, to 190 degrees so you can pull it. We want these to cut like a steak. So I'm gonna go ahead and get in here and cut a couple pieces of it. We always after season. So we take a little flakes of salt and make sure we put them on there. We don't want it overwhelming, but we also, so that's why we may taste this, try it, see if it needs a little bit more salt. The worst thing is an under-seasoned piece of meat, right? So nobody likes that. So that's just a little pro tip there. Make sure you season after the fact. We put our spare ribs on earlier. Our spare ribs have come off. One thing we did when we took them off, so we actually don't wrap them while we cook them, but we will wrap them with a little bit of our mustard peach barbecue sauce and let them rest. Just like we mentioned earlier, you got to rest all your meats. The bigger the piece of meat is, the longer we rest it. So a rack of ribs, we probably want to rest it for about anywhere from 45 minutes to an hour. So it's the next day, our brisket is done. It's been rested overnight. 14-hour cook. We've wrapped ours in butcher paper. You can wrap yours in foil, however you want to do it. We prefer the butcher paper method. And this brisket is looking phenomenal. So it's got great color. What we're looking for is that nice dark bark. So that nice mahogany bark is what we're looking for on our brisket. It's got that nice bullet shape to it. So one of the things that you've got to learn when you cook brisket is how to slice it. So a lot of people will get to where they can cook a brisket really well and then they slice it incorrectly. So brisket has two muscle sections. It's got what we call the flat. Flat meaning the smaller, thinner portion down here at the end. That's where you get your leaner meat from. And then we've got our point, which is over here in this section. I'm going to show you real quick how we cut our briskets for service on the food truck or in our catering. So I've got the brisket this way. I'm going to go ahead and make a cut almost exactly halfway in between. That's going to give us our two distinct sections. You can see there we're pretty juicy. And so we've got our flat section. If I were going in to cut a slice from our flat section, what I would want to do, and that's normally where we start, is I would want to go in and we're doing about pencil thick slices on our flat section. And we're going to work that direction, and those are just about perfect. We appreciate you guys watching with us today and letting us take you through how we barbecue and the different items we do. So we are Smoked Pickle Barbecue. I'm the owner, I'm Eric. If you ever want to order barbecue or catering from us, you can find our food truck at 920 Ebenezer Road, which is right across from Getty's View at the corner of Westland and Ebenezer. We're open Thursday through Saturday, and we run from 11 a.m. until we sell out. So we make a finite amount of barbecue every single week, and we just run until we sell it out over there. And if you ever want to order catering from us, you can go to our website, smokedpicklebarbecue.com.